What up, y'all? It's your boy. Right back up at you with another shorty. This one's gonna be about my college years. Um, I went to Catonsville Community College right after high school. So I graduated in 95. So in the fall of 95, I started Catonsville Community College. One of the funniest things before I even got into college, before we started school, I remember back then everybody went back to school the day after Labor Day. So my whole life, I'm used to going back to school the day after Labor Day. And at Catonsville Community College, at least that semester, we didn't start school until it was like the second or third week in September. I remember it was like 2 weeks after all the regular schools went back to school before I had to go back to college. Or start college, I should say. And I remember the day after Labor Day, my brother got up and he had to go to school because he's younger than me. And I remember him getting up and getting ready and going to school, and I see all the kids outside, and I didn't have to go to school. This was the first time in my life that I didn't have to go to school the day after Labor Day. So it felt real funny. But anyway, when I got there, well, before we even start with my first day or whatever, I remember that summer, I think it was like in August, when we went up there and registered for classes and did our orientation. One of the first things I noticed was how many people from Milford actually went to Catonsville Community College after we graduated. It had to be at least I must say, at least a quarter of class of 95 went to Catonsville Community College along with me after we graduated. It was so much of us up there. It almost felt like it was 13th grade and just in a different building, you know? I remember on my orientation, and that's where you register for your classes, and then they take you on the tour of the campus and all this stuff that they do for the freshmen. I remember on my orientation, it was and they had several different tours and stuff like that. But I remember on my orientation, it was 7 or 8 class of 95 members that was on my orientation. I mean, it was me, Pernell Pitt, Marcus Anderson, Carmen Bland, Caretha Mason, Tobias Sneller, Chantel Land, Lil Venus. Venus was on there. We was all on the same orientation. And it was like I said, it was a lot of 95 up there, but those were the ones that was on my orientation. And I was like, this gonna be interesting up here this year. So once we started, and I think my freshman year, because they said that if you have a full-time job, which I did at the time, I was working at McDonald's full-time. They said if you had a full-time job, you should only go to school part-time. So my freshman year, both semesters, I only went part-time. So I only took 9 or 10 credits each semester because I was working full-time. I did what they said. But that was just for that 1 year. My sophomore and junior years up there, because I ended up doing 3 years instead of 2 because I had a double major. I majored in office technology and in business administration. So I ended up doing 3 years of Catonsville. And that second and third year, I went to school full time. I worked full time and went to school full time because I was trying to get up out of there as quick as I could. So I had a good time up there. The campus is not very big, so it didn't take long to learn the layout of the land. Like I said, I saw a lot of familiar faces, not just from Milford, but people from Woodlawn was up there that I knew. The classes, like when I took my placement test, you had to take a placement test, and they placed you in whatever math class you should be in, what English class you should be in, and what reading class you should be in. And I started off with reading 101. I had English 101, but I did very well on the math. And they had me start out with statistics. And I remember when I got in that class, I couldn't figure out for the life of me, because I really aced that math test at the placement test, but statistics was just too much. I got in there, that class was packed. It was almost like a lecture hall. It had to have been about, God, it was at least, I'm going to say 75 people in that class. And it was like they were all upperclassmen. It was like, I felt so out of place in that class, because I don't think it was like anybody in there that was a freshman. And the work was hard, and they was moving fast. It was like they knew that stuff. I did not know that stuff. I remember I ended up dropping that class because it was just too much. But like my English class, my reading class, those were predominantly like freshmen or second year. We're really freshmen, because read those 101s are really freshmen, unless you. They put you in at the 096 level, where it's basically like high school English, high school reading or whatever. But they had me at 101. So it's like everybody was like freshmen. But some of my specialty courses that I took, not just my freshman year, but just throughout, one of the biggest differences was that everybody wasn't necessarily my age. Like in my office technology courses, there were not only just, regular college students there, but there were people there that had like jobs, and they were there taking classes for work. So I would have people in my class that were like in their 40s. It was like, they just there to take that one class, or they were just taking 2 classes for work. So it was the first time I had been going to school and having people in my class that were way older than me. In some of my specialty courses. I'm older now, so when I got there, we were still working on like Word Perfect. Like when I was in college, it was during my college years that they switched over to Microsoft Office, and that was after I was in college for this was like my second or third year in college. But when Microsoft Word and Excel and PowerPoint, I was in college when they first came out. I learned those applications when they first came out. Because before that, we were using Word Perfect. We were using Lotus 123 was the spreadsheets, and it was I think it was Paradox database system was that. So Paradox got replaced with PowerPoint. Lotus 123 got replaced with Excel, and Microsoft Word replaced Word Perfect. And this is back when Windows really first launched. We had just moved off of like Windows 3.1 into like Windows 95, something like that. I graduated in 95. So we were like working on Windows 95 back then. That's how old I am. Stuff that's ancient to y'all. I was on it when it first came out. So, and I did very well in those classes. I've always been very good on computer stuff. So, but college, and I really did my work when I was straight A's my freshman year in college, except for that statistics class, which I ended up dropping. But I think I got A's in all the rest of my classes. I did all my work. When you paying to go to school, you gonna get that work done. So I did very well my freshman year. It wasn't until my second year, because by the time my second year came in, I had gotten real comfortable in college. A lot of the Milford people that was there and the Woodlawn people that was there that I knew, after that first year, a lot of them either transferred to four-year universities, or they ended up going to like trade schools, or they just dropped out and started working. So by the time my second year came, a lot of my high school people that was there were gone, but I had been at school for a year now, so I met a lot of new people up there, and so I was very comfortable in college, and I got a little too comfortable and started playing around more, partying more on that campus. Up in that, everybody who went to Catonsville Community College know about that barn. I was in that barn faithfully. He was in there running, tonk tables, all kind of gambling going up in there. There was a lot of parties in the barn. Just having just a little too much fun. My second year in college was definitely my roughest year in college. Not because of the work, but because I was too comfortable and got to playing around a lot on that campus. And so by the time I got to my last year there, I had settled back down and had a very successful last year up there. But I really enjoyed Catonsville Community College. I would have loved to experience going to a four-year university and living on campus, but that just wasn't my grades weren't well enough to get any kind of scholarship. I played around a lot in high school, so four-year university just wasn't in the cards for me. So I had to go to community college, but I enjoyed it. Had a good time, learned a lot of stuff. I learned what I need to learn to start working for the state. I came out of college in 98, and in May of 98, started working for the state in November of 98, and I've been there ever since. So Catonsville Community College served me very well. Had a good time up there. Like I said, a lot of people that I graduated with. I told y'all the people that was on my orientation. I remember Mike Dennis was up there. Faye Long was up there. RIP to both of them. Diamond, Delvin Williams was up there. Lawrence, Crosby, Jeremy, McCready. Earl was up there. Terrell was up there. I'm just names off the top of my head right now. That I can think of from Milford that was up there. Mark Craig. I know it's a lot of people I'm forgetting, because there was a lot of us up there. I'm drawing a blank right now. When I do these videos, I don't prepare them. I'll just get an idea in my head and I just turn the camera on and start recording. So I have not, if I sat down and really thought about it, I could just rattle off all the names of the people from Milford that was up there. I just can't right now off the top of my head remember everybody that was up there. Just other than the ones, I just specifically remember the ones that was on my orientation. But I can't remember everybody right now from Milford that was up there, but it was a lot of us up there. Like I said, it was at least a quarter of 95. If I looked through my yearbook, I could pull them all out, and I would remember everybody from Milford that was up there. But those are the ones I can think of just off the top of my head from 95 that was up there. But that's it. That's a brief overrun of my college years. There's a lot of stories I could tell of things that happened up at Catonsville, because it was a community college. A lot of people were there that were just like in the same boat as I was, that played around too much in high school but wanted to go to college. So it was a lot of interesting characters up Catonsville Community College, and some interesting things happened. Fights happened up there. And it was funny because when fights would happen up there, anybody who's familiar with Catonsville Community College, the campus is basically like up on this hill, almost like a mountain, almost. And campus security seldomly would actually come up like in the quad where mostly everybody was at. They would circle around the campus, because when you would drive up into Catonsville Community College, you would drive up this long street off of Rolling Road and go up this long hill. When you get to the top of the hill, you're up on the campus, the outskirts of the campus where all the parking lots and stuff is at. And it's just this big circle. You drive around a big circle, and within the circle is the main campus. And right smack in the middle of the main campus is the quad where everybody hung out at. That's where the barn was at. That was where the radio station was at. The main administration office was up there by the quad. Campus security almost never went up there. They would just circle around the outskirts of the campus. So you hardly ever even would see security unless you were on the outskirts of the campus. And the only reason why you would be on the outskirts of the campus is driving out of there or on the MTA bus riding up out of there. So if something happened up on that quad, if somebody was to call campus security, by the time they would get up there, it's already over and everybody done disappeared. You know? So, man, people, drugs were being sold up there. Sometimes fights would happen. All kind of stuff would happen in that barn. And when it would go down, security would never make it in time. Never make it in time. I don't recall not one time something going down in that barn or a fight breaking out in the K building where the cafeteria was at, or up in the main quad where the radio tower was at. And security made it there in time to break it up. I remember my second year up there, a big fight happened up on right in the middle of the quad by the radio tower over a football bet, over a Super Bowl bet that went down. And somebody bucked on the money. And they got stomped out right there in the middle of the quad. And security never made it in time. Never made it in time. It take too long. They wasn't trying to do no work. It took too long to get up there. But I had some good times up there. Good times up there. So that was it for now. I remember any specific stories about Catonsville, because some things went down. I mean, a couple fights that happened in the cafeteria. And the thing about the cafeteria was in the K building, which is one of the main administration building. That's where you would sign up for your classes. That's where you would take your placement tests. And also that's where the main cafeteria was at. So a lot of people hung out in that cafeteria. The cafeteria in that K building and the barn were the two biggest hangout spots. So usually if something went down, it was either in that K building, that cafeteria, or over in that barn, because a lot of gambling going on over there, because they had the pool tables over there. We had the tonk ring over there. People hit spades over there. It was all kind of gambling going on in that barn. And when they would have parties, a lot of times at night or on the weekends, it would be in the barn. So that's where stuff would go down in there, or it would go out in that main quad with a radio tower at, right in the smack center of campus. If something went down, it's usually in one of those three places, because that's where most people hung out at. Either in the K building, down that cafeteria, the barn, which was right across from the K building on the other side. You had the K building, then you had in the middle was the radio station area, and then you had the barn on the other side of that. And usually when things would go down in a negative way, one of those three locations was where it happened at. So I'm sure if I think about it hard enough, I can think of some specific things that happened. But a lot of things that went down were not people that y'all know. A couple of them are. But I might share those stories with y'all one day. All right, so that's it for now. Just a little rundown of my 3 years at Catonsville Community College. Had a good time up there. Had fun up there. Got a good education up there. Got myself a good job from my time up there. And the best part about it, I don't owe them people no money. When I came out of Catonsville, 6 months later, I got a job with the state. The first thing I did with my checks, because I was still living at home at the time, the first thing I did with my first 3 checks, my first 3 checks from the state, I used to pay off my balance at Catonsville Community College, so I would not owe them people no money. So that was the first thing I did, was paid off the balance of my last tuition when I was there, and boom. I don't owe Catonsville Community College nothing. I don't owe them a dime. That was the first thing I did. Just paid off my college debt. So that's it for now. So I'll holler at y'all the next one.